Last night, the police were on the hunt for a dangerous fugitive who had taken refuge in a hospital. Police vehicles surrounded the building, and the leader of the operation used a loudspeaker to order the suspect to surrender and release the hostages. Afterward, he inquired with the sniper about the likelihood of eliminating the suspect without harming the hostages, and was informed that the probability was 10%. Meanwhile, Lewis expressed his disapproval of the suspect's behavior, stating that his emotional outburst provided the sniper with a clear shot to the head. A short time later, the man concealed himself behind the patient. Jack understood that their strategy had been discovered, and he gave the order to commence the assault on the building. Lewis spoke up again, instructing the criminal to seek refuge in a secluded location and to secure all the windows and doors, anticipating the arrival of the assault team. Carl heeded the hostage's counsel and swiftly covered the window. The police did not understand how the man was able to anticipate their actions. The commander said that this person had something very important, so they needed a new plan. Meanwhile, the criminal was watching the actions of the law enforcement agencies, and he couldn't understand why they weren't taking any action. In the next moment, a thought struck him. Could it be that they know about that thing he has? The hero noticed the man's distress and told him that he had bigger problems, as he was planning to escape using a hostage, but the police had cornered him. After the boy's words, Carl turned to him, aiming the gun at him, saying that he wouldn't allow him to speak and could kill him at any moment. Lewis just laughed at him, asking if he had read the name of this place carefully. Klaus, confused, asked what was so special about this place. The guy replied that he had only been living in this hospital for 2 months. The criminal cursed after hearing his hostage's words. The hero confirmed the man's thoughts, saying that a dying person has nothing left to fear. Hiding his smile in the shadows, he asked why the man had been inspecting himself so closely just a few seconds ago, wondering if he was hiding something valuable. The man didn't have time to react when a pillow flew into his face. Lewis took advantage of this to get closer to the criminal. The hero struck the opponent in the face. In the next moment, he knocked the man to the floor. Vulnerable, Carl asked if the guy had deceived him. Lewis replied that there was no deception. He indeed had little time left to live, but not because of an illness. Afterward, he sat next to the criminal, feeling around in his vest pockets. A few moments later, he pulled out a small box, asking if this was the item the police were hunting him for. Carl asked the guy to return the item to him. The hero was curious about what was inside and opened the box. He was surprised when a golden glow poured out from it. A moment later, golden rays surrounded him, and a voice in the young man's head informed him that a recording of the time travel was being made. The man looked at the guy in horror, saying that he had activated an account from another world, and now he could not escape a tragic end. Lewis struck him again, saying that he was already doomed to die. After picking up a gun, he said that if Carl didn't provide more details about this account, he would die. The criminal had no choice but to agree. He said that the meteor shower that occurred in the year 2800 significantly changed their world. Some people gained the ability to move to another world and complete tasks, after which they returned back. As a reward for passing the trials, one could receive medicines for all ailments, treasures from that world, and various other goods. The emergence of another world greatly destabilized the order of the native universe, and people began to kill travelers between worlds, wishing to uncover the secret of crossing spaces. After going through a series of games and battles, people discovered that the key to movement lies in a special item called the Account of Another World. Those who receive this account gain a special mark, and teleportation to another dimension occurs within 15 minutes. A few minutes later, an armed group burst into the room. They expected to see anything, but certainly not what lay before their eyes. The criminal was sitting tied to a chair by the window. Meanwhile, Lewis received a notification that his first trial would begin in a minute. Looking at the timer, he pondered the information he had received. He concluded that no matter how much time had passed since the journey to another world, in reality, it was just a moment. Putting away his phone, he stood at the very edge of the roof. He regretted that, when moving, he could not take anything with him except for the clothes on his back. In the next moment, he noticed that the criminal was being put into a police car. The system once again notified the boy that in 10 seconds he would enter the testing space. He did not feel fear. He was happy that he managed to find the supernatural world a few months before his end. In the next moment, his surroundings changed, and a voice announced that the connection of the traveler was beginning. The hero barely had time to understand anything before he found himself standing in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by other travelers. The system reported that after the character creation is completed, the participant can view the character map at any time using the power of thought. Lewis looked around with interest. After that, he summoned his character's map. After examining all the characteristics, he realized that he needed to level up his skills because he was at the very lowest level. He was distracted from his thoughts by voices behind him. Someone was advertising their new green-level product, a poisonous sword. The men looked at the offered product with skepticism. Charlie said that this sword is a reward for completing the trial at the parallel level. He explained that there are 4 levels of trials: paper, parallel, strong, and cruel. And so far, no one has passed the cruel level, but many have completed the parallel and strong levels, which is where blue and green level weapons come from. The merchant bragged that this poisonous sword is a stolen item from a player who was in the top 50 of the hate list. Bidding for the weapon began among the crowd after the words were heard. Charlie was pleased that everyone fell for his tricks, and he would be able to make a good profit. Suddenly, an alarm sounded in the public zone. Everyone was informed that an extremely dangerous person was attempting to enter the zone. Moments later, a law enforcement squad from the zone appeared. They were targeting the criminal who was number 1 on the hate list. When everyone started to scatter, the hero realized that the knights were aiming for him. Upon seeing them, Charlie immediately began to gather his goods, tossing them into his bag on the go. Before he could gather everything, 2 knights rushed towards him. Charlie and Lewis were both running for their lives. The merchant asked, "Could it be that the kid is also a criminal?" The hero replied that they didn't have time for chatter. They needed to hide from the pursuit. Suddenly, the system announced that he had been placed on the hate list and was number 1 among the most dangerous criminals, with his current 6-star index. This means that they would try to eliminate him by any means necessary. Seeing the portal in front of them, Charlie shouted that they could teleport if they entered it. The knight saw where his target was heading and decided to use a ranged attack. At that moment, Lewis was just a couple of centimeters from the portal when the system announced that his hate level exceeded the allowable threshold. The portal let him through at the last moment, just as the attack was about to hit the guy. Charlie watched the explosion from the knight's attack. He missed his chance to escape. Lewis found himself in a new location when the system informed him that he was starting a trial of cruel difficulty, where death in this trial leads to death in reality, and his goal is to survive until the end. A moment later, an entity appeared and announced the beginning of the trial. Do not fear death. After that, the spotlights turned on, shining down on the hero, and thanks to the light, he was able to make out the outlines of the crowd surrounding him. The boy was curious about what would happen next, as the beginning was quite good. Meanwhile, the host said that the show was sponsored by the Spatial Committee, as well as the inexhaustible dimension of loners. Lewis concluded that this program is similar to blind dating. Previously, the guy was a heartbreaker, but after the injury, he had no opportunity to meet with his admirers. Edison said that now they would find out what the strength of their guest was, and he was greatly surprised when he saw that the guest only had a paper level. A moment later, he announced that it was the first time such a candidate had appeared on stage. The hero asked the system if there was any explanation for such a level of strength. In the next moment, a system window appeared, from which he learned that the paper level is the weakest parallel level. The level with mediocre combat power is strong. The strong level requires great combat power, and the cruel level is the most powerful level. The guy summarized the data. He ended up in trials for players at the boss level, and if he dies, he will die permanently. Meanwhile, Edison continued, saying that Lewis is the best in history. He will be able to show them the most beautiful and epic death, as only those players whose deaths are the most outstanding make it to this scene. The hero interrupted his monologue, stating that he had previously mentioned this was a show about blind dates, and Lewis had already been waiting for it to start. Edison noted that the guy was behaving extremely confidently. After that, he moved on to introduce the first girl. A moment later, she stepped onto the stage. Lewis expected to see a human girl, but not a monster. The host said that Miss Tenderlips is the star of his show. She feeds on people's fear. She loves to ask the candidate about her beauty, after which she devours him, causing terror. The guy shouted that the girl was very pretty, and the thought of being eaten did not flatter him. When the host announced girl number 2, the contestant appeared before the candidate in the blink of an eye. She had a human upper body, while the lower part of her torso was that of a spider. Edison said that she is their special guest, a girl who loves to lay her eggs in her partner so that he can carry the offspring instead of her. However, since all her partners are dead, she had to come to this show again. When the hero was asked what he thought of her, he immediately said that she was incomparably beautiful. After that, the girl left the stage, and the host invited the next contestant. A giantess stepped onto the stage. Edison announced that she was a famous butcher who once tortured 16 of her partners. In the next moment, she let out her battle roar. Lewis was horrified by this sight. He asked if she was really a girl. The giantess heard his words, which stung her heart. When the contestant, with tears in her eyes, rushed back, Edison asked the guy to refrain from comments in the style of gender equality, or he would be excluded from the show. The hero was upset that there were no normal girls here who met human standards. The host heard him and said that they have such a girl, their last contestant, the most famous beauty in their world, who is renowned for her cruelty. The man's words intrigued the boy. When Edison invited a girl to the stage, no one showed up, not even a few minutes later. The host received a message and stated that the guest is too lazy to come and will be looking for a partner from home. She is currently watching everything through the broadcast. Having said this, he continued, explaining the rules of the show. The guy must spend the whole day outside the house, together with the girls, in warm and close relationships. Now the guy is supposed to go outside, where he is already expected. Meanwhile, Charlie was in the courtroom. He explained that he is not familiar with Lewis. He was running away from the Knights because he was sure they were targeting him, but he was just an ordinary merchant. After listening to the guy, the head of the court said that they had conducted an investigation and found that he was indeed not connected to the first among the most dangerous criminals. The merchant with the accusation sighed in relief, glad that the threat had receded. But in the next moment, the head continued, saying that for trading counterfeit weapons, he is sentenced to exile in the City of Hatred, and before that, he will be assigned 200 points of hatred. After the verdict, Charlie was immediately dragged out of the courtroom. One of those present asked whether they should continue the search for the particularly dangerous criminal. The leader replied that there was no need for that, because at his current level of abilities, he would not survive the brutal trial. Meanwhile, Diana was venting her anger on the prey, butchering it. She was outraged by Lewis's words and vowed to kill him at their next meeting. The hero received a system notification informing him that all the girls were friendly towards him, except for the giantess. Suddenly, Diana attacked him from behind, intending to kill. The guy stood still, feeling the sword approaching him. He only asked where the beauty was that he had accidentally offended. The blade stopped just a couple of centimeters from him. Diana couldn't believe her ears. Lewis continued to say that even though he is known for his charm, he has never met such an amazing girl. He lamented that he could not immediately see the tenderness hidden beneath such a beautiful, strong body. Diana listened to his words with bated breath. She had never been told such things. The guy sincerely admitted that he had never seen such a person. She attracted him. He felt the girl's kind, caring, and strong character. The system reported that Diana's attitude changed from hatred to friendliness. Lewis continued to ingratiate himself with her, saying that he made a mistake by missing such a wonderful girl. He will no longer find anyone like her among thousands of beauties. The giantess's heart was ready to leap with joy as she listened to the boy's words. When the system notified the hero that the girl's feelings had changed to infatuation, he decided to continue. Lewis uttered a phrase he had once heard, stating that true beauty lies not outside but within. Kneeling before the flower, he concluded that it was precisely for this reason that beautiful flowers grow in this eerie place. Lewis thinks that Diana is just like that. After his words, she dropped her weapon. When the guy turned around, he saw a happy girl. The system reported that its favor towards the candidate has increased to the level of fantasy. Now he can choose this participant as his wife. In the next moment, the girl confessed that she was very touched by his words and finally made up her mind. When Lewis asked what exactly she meant, Diana began to take a deep breath. He had a sudden realization about what she wanted to do. A couple of seconds later, the giantess screamed at the top of her lungs, causing the guy's ears to ring. Diana informed the remaining guests that from this moment on, Lewis belongs to her. The hero was not pleased by the fact that the attitude of the two remaining girls had changed to disgust. The happy giantess headed towards the object of her affection. She said that they would be together forever. Suddenly, sticky webs stuck to her feet. In the next moment, she fell to the ground. Diana was trying to understand what had happened when a web net was already flying down at her from above, and in the next second, she was pinned to the ground. The Spider-Woman asked the giantess to hand over the boy for re-education. Diana struggled to lift herself off the ground, but she said that he belonged to her and no one dared to touch him. After her words, Erica turned to the hero, asking if he was willing to bear a child for her. Lewis noticed that her attitude towards him changed after Diana's words. So if he answers no, he is very likely to be killed, which means he needs to take the initiative. The guy looked at the girl with disdain, asking who allowed her to speak to him like that. Erica was shocked by his question. She did not expect such behavior from her victim. Meanwhile, the hero continued. He asked if she really said that she liked him only because she wanted a child from him. He began to portray himself as a heartbroken man by stating that the girl wanted to use him merely as a vessel for childbirth. He wonders if she has even a drop of feelings for him. When the Spider-Woman said it wasn't so, the guy pounced on her with questions about how she would explain all of this. They didn't even have a wedding, what surname their child would have, and she just wanted him to have a child for her. The hero was surprised when her attitude changed to friendliness. Moreover, he attracted the attention of another unknown girl. Observing this, Edison reported that the Gender Equality Agency expressed its support for the candidate. In the next moment, he received a message, after which the host informed everyone that Miss Lin had sent a message asking to tell more about the guy. This is the first time this girl has shown interest in anyone. Meanwhile, the hero was pondering that besides these three, there are other beings participating in the trial. In the next moment, he turned at the sound of a voice calling him. Eliza stood before him, and Lewis decided to show himself in order to gain the favor of more participants. Eliza asked the candidate if she was beautiful, but the guest didn't even have time to finish when the hero slapped her. He said with anger in his eyes that he hates insecure people. Doesn't she understand that with such looks, she charms the people around her? Eliza just silently looked at the guy, holding her cheek. Meanwhile, Edison was in shock from what was happening. He was sure that the guy was in for a swift punishment for such promiscuity, knowing the girl's behavior. When he looked back at the screen, expecting to see an enraged guest, he saw embarrassment on her face and awkwardness. Eliza tried to sense Lewis's emotions, but she did not see even a hint of fear in his heart. But hers, on the contrary, was beating much faster for reasons unknown to her. At that moment, the hero received a message that his level of hatred was at its peak, and he obtained a new mechanism, a source of evil. He learned that this ability allows objects in contact with him to experience a state of ecstasy for 10 minutes. Looking at the girl, he assumed that she was currently under his influence. Suddenly, she exclaimed that she was burning with desire to taste the guy. After that, Eliza headed towards her goal, saying that they would soon become one. The giantess, who had managed to free herself from the web, blocked the girl's path. Moments later, she sent her rival flying, stating that Lewis belonged only to her. Erica was not idle either. She crept up behind the hero, declaring that despite everything, he would belong to her. The guy turned around and smiling, said that the other guests had a different opinion, pointing behind her. The giantess and Eliza had managed to team up against the Spider-Woman. The hero watched as three monsters of brutal level fought each other for him. He understood the essence of this game. If he chooses one of the girls, the others will hate him, and ultimately, he will die. But if he just stands by and watches, then when they finish the fight, he will face the monster himself and die. Suddenly, he distracted the girls from the battle, saying that he was very sorry, but he could not choose any of them. The battles do not evoke any positive feelings in him. Eliza asked what he meant. The hero replied that even if they destroyed the whole world, it would not touch him at all. Diana asked if he really wanted to leave them, but the guy answered that he was just a sensitive person. He then proposed the following. Each of them would spend some time alone with him to develop their feelings well. After that, he promised that he would definitely choose a beloved. As soon as this happens, he will do his best to take care of his wife and children. Lewis decided to give them an illusory hope to carry out his plan. When Eliza took his hand, he said that even if he had to die at the hands of his beloved, he would accept it with joy. His words resonated pleasantly in her heart. Afterward, she smiled sweetly, saying that she would definitely prove that only she is suitable for the role of his killer. Sometime later, the couple found themselves at a local cemetery where an unknown monster resided. The system reported that there was 1 hour left until the end of the show. Lewis approached the monster and struck it on the head. Angered by such audacity, a certain little man attacked him. The hero called for Eliza's help when his opponent was dangerously close. The girl instantly found herself behind the monster, asking how it dared to attack her beloved. The vampire wanted to explain himself to her, but in the next moment, Eliza attacked him, tearing out his eye. The monster fled at the first opportunity, clutching at the empty eye socket. Meanwhile, the girl presented the guy with the eye, asking if he liked her gift. When Lewis took it, the system reported that the eye of the vampire is a very valuable material. Then he touched Eliza's shoulder, saying that Yuan had a lot to tell her. At that moment, he activated his suggestion ability. She stated that when he looks at her with that gaze, she gets lost and doesn't know when and how to kill him. The hero realized that her very instinct is to kill him. He embraced the girl, saying that she was the best girl of all he had met, and he would like to die only by her hands. But in the next moment, he said that the show would not allow this to happen, and Eliza did not understand what his words meant. The guy explained that the show is organized for everyone to see how she competes with others. They can't really want the girl to find her happiness. They are just making content out of her. Listening to these words, she concluded that there is some logic to it. Then he pointed somewhere far ahead, saying that there was a monster and that he was very scared. Eliza immediately rushed in that direction to check who dared to scare her chosen one. Louis, smiling, watched the girl. He thought that if the program was plotting against him, he would prepare them a little surprise. Sometime later, Eliza encountered a monster and immediately dealt with it. She was in a state of ecstasy and could only think about how delicious Louis would be. A couple of seconds later, the effect of her ability wore off, and the girl came to her senses. The hero received a message that Eliza's attitude has changed to a murderous one. During this time, he subjected Eric to the same technique, and now she's in a state of ecstasy, making her easy to influence. The girl hugged the boy from behind, saying that if he chooses one of the remaining two, he will definitely be killed in the end. But Erica is different from them. She just wants a child from him. When the hero becomes hers, she will protect him by all means. She warned that she cannot wait for his decision forever, and if he does not agree, the girl will immediately kill him. A moment later, Louis said that if she wants a child, it is in her best interest to protect it properly. The girl confirmed his words, saying that his body is very valuable. After her response, he approached her and whispered in her ear that in this trial, danger awaits him everywhere, and no one cares whether she finds her love or if he can father a child with her. The hero activated the suggestion, stating that such a program needs to be interrupted. Suddenly, a furious scream from Eliza was heard in the distance. The guy said that he rejected her, and now she is going to kill him. Immediately after his words, an enraged girl burst onto the clearing. The Spider-Woman protected the guy from the claws of her rival. Louis made the most innocent and defenseless face he could, saying that it wasn't worth saving him. He deserved it. Realizing that Erica had broken the rules they had established, Eliza intended to kill her. But the Spider-Woman was faster. She released a web that enveloped her opponent's body. Eliza severed her own arm to free herself in any way. Immediately after that, she lunged at her opponent. In the next moment, Eliza severed one of Erica's legs. The girl demanded that the Spider-Woman return her boyfriend. Neither of them wanted to back down from their position, which led to them clashing in a fierce duel. Meanwhile, Louis learned that there were 5 minutes left until the end of the trial, and he enjoyed watching both girls. Suddenly, Diana called out to him. He turned towards her, saying that he had been waiting for her. The girl was unhappy. She had been waiting for him at the agreed place, but he never came, spending time with others. The giantess came to the conclusion that he had been lying to her all this time. The hero was about to refute the girl's thoughts, but in the next moment, he saw his hand detach from his body. Feeling terrible pain, he collapsed to the ground, leaning against a rock. Diana knelt down in front of the wounded boy, saying that he reminded her of someone from her past. She stated that in those times, she was not yet a resident of this world, but worked as a butcher. Because she was ugly and overweight, no one paid her any attention. One day, she met a man who admired her greatly and said many kind words. For the first time, she felt that someone cared about her. Sometime later, a man handed her a folder with important documents, asking her to keep it, even knowing that it was contraband. Diana accepted the folder. After her, bandits pursued her, intending to obtain these documents, and the girl tried her best to hide from them. She found herself near a half-empty establishment, noticing her beloved there. Diana heard him telling his friends that she was like a little dog, willing to go to the ends of the earth for him, fulfilling any of his whims, as long as they ignored her pitiful appearance. The girl said that on that day, she chopped the man into many small pieces. What Louis said during their first meeting was very similar to his words. Therefore, she will do the same to the hero as she did to her ex. Louis managed to activate the suggestion because, fortunately for him, Diana grabbed his severed hand. When he asked if the giantess remembered her name, she did not understand why he was asking. He explained that while she was participating in the show all this time, her real name was never used. The hero said that it was all because neither in this show nor that person was truly interested in getting to know her. She was merely a tool in their hands. When Diana asked what she should do, Louis replied that the girl should kill. He made her think about who constantly uses her to create content, who makes her perform like a clown, who has hidden her real name. She must kill them all. After the boy's words, the giantess lunged at the girls, intending to kill each of them. Thus, all three rivals tried to kill each other, and the system reported that there were 30 seconds left until the end. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him, Louis collected the Spider-Woman's paw, the severed arm of the monster girl, and the weapon known as the savage gutting tool. Suddenly, Eliza was distracted from the fight. She was curious about what the guy was doing. When the hero noticed that all eyes were on him, he bowed and said that he was pleased to meet them. Immediately after that, The system reported that the program was finished and his task was successfully completed. Edison was shocked that for the first time in his show, someone managed to escape alive while all three guests lost. The crowd was outraged. Many demanded their money back. They wanted to see someone's death. The host ignored the crowd's shouts, stating that this show would be recorded in the archives and could lead to a decrease in the participants' ratings. In the next moment, the giantess appeared before him. She said that now his show was needed by no one. Edison stood up, saying that his guests had a couple of remarks about today's program. He asked if they really wanted to escalate the conflict right on stage. This could damage their reputation. A sudden voice drew the attention of everyone in the hall. The host bowed, curious about why the girl had come to them. Before everyone stood the fourth guest of today's show, Miss Len. The girl stated that she was giving them 10 seconds. She hates the crowd. Edison couldn't understand if she was serious. Seeing that her words had no effect, the girl began a countdown. Everyone started to panic and run away, fearing that if they didn't leave in time, the girl would kill them. After a while, only 4 remained in the hall. Then Len approached the host and asked for all the information about Lewis. When Edison said that he only had a paper level and was not worth her attention, the girl made a dissatisfied face, repeating her request. After that, the man hurriedly provided all the information he had. Laziness was satisfied with what she saw. Hiding the paper in her pocket, she stated that they could continue their disputes without her involvement. After these words, the girl also suddenly disappeared, just as she had appeared. Eliza was surprised that Laziness was seriously interested in that guy. Meanwhile, Charlie was cleaning in the city of hatred. He cursed the guy who got him caught. Suddenly, on the main gates, where all completed tasks were displayed, a new completed task of a hard level appeared in the first line. Charlie was greatly surprised that someone was able to pass a trial of such a level. Lewis was teleported to the city of hatred, after which the system reported that his level had been raised to 3, and he could return to his world at any moment, or the hero could explore this world for an hour. The guy chose to explore the world, and when all the system windows disappeared, he noticed that his severed hand had returned to its place. He began to look around, noting that this place was not much different from the safe zone he had entered at the very beginning. Lewis decided to check his reward for the task by calling up his inventory. He was intrigued by the purple chest. A window of the demonic proximity skill appeared before him. It allows one to enter a state of demonization by attracting evil. The duration of the action is equal to the spiritual strength multiplied by seconds. After reading all the details, he concluded that the skill could be life-threatening. However, despite this, the hero decided to study it. After that, he decided to study the weapon he had acquired during the trial. A window appeared before him with the characteristics of the ferocious gutting tool. It is capable of enhancing its own attack power by absorbing the souls of the slain. The defense of opponents is reduced to almost 0. Lewis was astonished by how powerful this weapon was. A moment later, he summoned it. As soon as the giant scissors were in his hand, his health points began to drop continuously. He noted that it was quite convenient and light, but if he wanted to use it, he would need a lot of medicine for recovery. The suddenly approaching monster called out to the guy, and he was glad that he would have a new toy. Only upon finding itself in dangerous proximity to the hero did the monster notice the horrifying aura of death that surrounded him. When the guy took a step towards him, thousands of dead souls followed behind. It was a terrifying sight. The monster ran away, saving its life. Lewis guessed that the fierce gutting creature had scared it so much that he decided to retract his weapon. A moment later, he was called by Charlie. The hero recognized the merchant he had met earlier. He immediately approached the one responsible for his confinement here. Lewis apologized to the guy, saying that it was his first game, and he was a newcomer here. Charlie looked at him with undisguised suspicion, asking how a newcomer could become the most wanted criminal in the safe zone. The guy replied that he himself did not know the reason. He had just finished the novice trial and asked an acquaintance to tell him about this world. Charlie said that he would do him a favor and tell him everything he knew. This world consists of several safe zones and 4 districts: paper, parallel, strong, and hard. A safe zone is a place that is carefully guarded by the system. Even if one dies there, they will not lose their items and can continue to exist. The paper level area is a low-risk zone, which is also protected by a system. There are low-level monsters that allow them to pass the trials. The area of the parallel level is a zone that is partially controlled by the system. It is inhabited by very strong monsters, and high-level equipment can also be obtained there. But dying there, he will lose all his items. The high-level area has low defense. Monsters of a fierce level appear there. Only the best players can complete challenges there. If he dies there, he will lose not only his items, but also all character levels. Charlie warned the guy to only take on tasks in areas that he could handle. Lewis asked about the hard level area. The merchant replied that no one had been able to pass it until today. This is an area that is completely uncontrolled by the system. Legendary purple-class weapons are produced there, but because it is located in a forbidden zone, it is impossible to access this location through a portal. Afterward, Charlie said that they are currently in a high-level area, and they need to complete a mission to reduce their hate score in order to return to a safe zone. He asked what Lewis's hate point score was. If he is a newcomer, he will be able to return quite quickly. Opening his stats, the hero tried not to reveal his surprise. He had an infinite hate score. Sometime later, they were walking through the city. Charlie explained that cunning and deceit are held in high regard here. Those who ended up here for trivial reasons are considered lower beings. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a monster that was trying to drag a boy somewhere. A moment later, the monster pierced its victim with its claws. He said that when passing by, one must definitely stop in and buy something. Charlie said that the local inhabitants do not like people and that one must behave very carefully to avoid attracting their attention. But our hero was already standing in front of the shop gates. The merchant looked at his partner as if crazy. He told him to get out of there as quickly as possible. Ignoring all the advice, Lewis entered the building. Once inside, he approached the counter, saying that he wanted to buy a healing potion. The seller said that for such a special guest, the price is 500 points per bottle. The hero looked at the price tag and said that it indicated a completely different price of 50 points. The monster approached the guy, saying that for humans it cost 10 times more. After his words, Louis stepped back from the counter, and the seller, laughing, said that it was already too late to leave. The hero turned at his words and asked why the seller thought he was about to leave. The monster felt a threat from the guy and stepped back a few paces. In the next moment, Lewis attacked him with scissors. The lower half of the seller's body was severed. Only the head and arms of the monster remained hanging in the air. The hero, surrounded by an aura of evil breath, began to approach him, intending to destroy him once and for all. The monster pressed itself against the wall, begging the guy not to come closer. He said that he is the owner of this shop, and if he is killed, the mayor of the city will not let it go so easily. The hero trapped the man in his scissors. After that, he said he would spare him if he sold him all his items at a 10% discount. The monster, crying from fear, agreed to the guy's terms. A few minutes later, Lewis emerged from the shop cloaked in a dark hooded cape. He was pleased that he managed to buy 20 healing potions and 20 spirit elixirs for a total of 200 points. He also managed to acquire a cloak that can conceal the breath of evil from high-level creatures. He is also able to hide the guy from monsters of a brutal level for 10 minutes. Louis was liking this world more and more. As soon as Charlie noticed the guy who had come out, he ran up to him, examining his cloak. He couldn't understand how Lewis had managed to get it, as it was very expensive. The hero replied that the owner had given him a discount on this item. The merchant had a hard time believing his words. At this seller's shop, all goods are 10 times more expensive than usual. It's hard to imagine him giving anyone a discount, especially on such an item. The guy looked at Lewis standing in front of him once more and concluded that he would not let Lewis slip away, as he could become rich thanks to him. In the next moment, he offered the hero to become friends by activating his account. Lewis also activated his seal and brought the back of his hand with the seal to the boy's seal. After that, the system reported that Charlie had been added as a friend and he could send him a message at any time. Immediately after that, the merchant disappeared. The hero looked at his hand, surprised that travelers could connect with each other in this way. A moment later, the system reported that his time in this world had expired. In the next second, he was once again standing in hospital clothes on the hospital roof. The guy was informed that the next trial would start in a day. Lewis turned on his phone and looked at the timer. In that world, he had spent 2 hours, while only 12 minutes had passed here. Then he summoned a healing potion from his inventory. He was glad that he could use things from that world here. In the next moment, he drank a healing potion and hurried to leave the roof. Sometime later, he was walking down the street, noting that the shelter across the street was quite noisy today. Meanwhile, Charlie was handing out candies to the children from the shelter. He boasted that he had finally found a sponsor who would provide him with money for their maintenance. Suddenly, he noticed a guy passing by who seemed familiar to him. Lewis approached the main entrance of the hospital, where he was met by 2 nurses, asking where he had been all this time. He replied that he went out to get some fresh air, as he couldn't be cured by ordinary means, and he could only rely on fate. The hero approached his ward. Although he had drunk 5 bottles of potions, he was not sure that they would have any effect on his illness. Upon opening the door to the room, he was greatly surprised. On his bed lay a very beautiful girl with light hair. After he entered the room, she changed her position, turning onto her stomach and began playing on the game console. Louis turned away from the stranger, thinking that his illness was progressing. He approached the nightstand for the pills. After pouring the necessary dose into his palm, he said that this was the most unreal hallucination since the onset of brain problems. The demoness, who cannot complete the very first level of a children's game, he drank the medicine, saying that she should disappear in a minute. The stranger shoved the console in his face, saying that if he was so confident in himself, he should complete it on his own. After that, she stared at him with a look of dissatisfaction on her face. The hero decided to touch the girl, marveling at how intensely his hallucinations were progressing. Laziness stood still, enduring the boy's touch. A moment later, she couldn't take it anymore, and summoning her weapon, said that if he didn't stop, she would kill him. Louis asked not to be angry with him. He would complete the first level in the game for her. A few seconds later, the nurse knocked on the hero's room, asking if he was okay, as there had been a loud noise coming from there for some time. A few minutes later, the guy completed the first level of the game, defeating the character of the same name, along with the girl. She was sitting on the table pondering that her representation in this world was worthless. Louis said that in this game, she actually has quite a good character, much better than in the old version. He explained to her that people tend to imagine something terrible when mentioning the unknown, but not beauties like her. After that, he said that he was flattered that the fourth guest had visited him in this world. Laziness smiled bloodthirstily, saying that he truly deserved to be the survivor after awakening the source of evil. He was the first to survive with this ability. The hero could hardly believe that all the others had been killed while possessing such a power. The guest said that she came to remind him not to face the trials alone if he is not confident in himself. If he performs well, they will meet again. He asked her to tell him more about the source of evil, whether it was somehow related to his illness, and he was also curious if creatures from her world could come into this one. Laziness replied that she is a special case and no one else is capable of moving here. If he wants to know more about his ability, he must do his utmost to avoid dying. The next day, Louis took on a new challenge in a strong-level multiplayer mode. When he stepped into the square, where all the players had gathered, he was amazed by their number. The hero walked through the crowd, attracting curious glances. Some did not understand how he, having a third level, was able to get here. Suddenly, a man appeared, who was the master of this task. After examining everyone, he pointed at Louis. As he approached, he asked what was happening with his level. Jack asked how, with his abilities, he ended up here. He should be among the paper ones, but not here at all. Receiving the response that the guy was just lucky, the man decided not to get involved and simply told him not to get in the way. Suddenly, a bullet pierced his head. The system announced the death of Jack. An old man who appeared greeted everyone and said that he needed to deal with the employee who had violated the tardiness law. Everyone present here was in shock at what was happening. Lopez said that they shouldn't be so surprised if they had seen the manual. They should know that employees cannot rebel against their director, which is what they currently are. The hero concluded that in this trial, the director could kill an employee with one blow for any violation of the rules. Meanwhile, Lopez continued. He said that there are 3 orders in their directories. The first is a simple blue one, while the other 2 are more complex and red. He then mentioned that their work is quite simple. We need to complete these 3 orders, and then we can get out of here alive. After his words, the system announced the activation of the main quest, to escape this place alive. One of the brave souls tore off a sheet with a red task, saying that it shouldn't be something impossible. After that, the system reported that the delivery contained a slap in the face, and the recipient, the boss of the high-level Hellwolf, immediately stated that he refused this task. After his words, Lopez shot him in the head, saying that according to the 5th article of the handbook, they are not allowed to refuse the assignment. He reminded them not to forget the rules. Another brave soul decided to test his luck by pulling out a blue slip. He needed to deliver dinner to room 306 of the rotating skyscraper. Delighted by such an easy task, he rushed to the customer. Everyone in the room merely exchanged silent glances with each other. Louis said that the assignment stated to deliver 3 orders, and once an order is received, it cannot be refused, so nothing prevents him from intercepting someone else's. He was starting to be surrounded by players with self-satisfied smiles on their faces. One of the players said that he had only 1 red order that he could exchange with him. Louis asked if the guy really wanted to exchange with him. In the last meeting with Lenya, the hero asked if he could undergo trials below the cruel level due to his ability. The girl replied that he would be able to, but at the same time, the difficulty of the trials for others might be increased. If the trial had a parallel level, then due to his interference, it will change to a strong one. The hero said that he was not opposed to exchanging something for fun. In the next moment, he opened his directory, showing the red sheets. And when he flipped them over, everyone saw another red task. The crowd was in shock. They did not understand why he had no blue tasks. After that, the guy asked if anyone wanted to exchange deliveries with him. At that moment, everyone started to disperse, telling him to keep his distance from them. When everyone left Lopez's room, he told the young man that it was the first time he had seen someone with 3 red orders. But unfortunately, with his level, it would only be a waste of time. Luis asked the man if he wanted to have some fun watching him complete these tasks. He was flattered by such an offer. The director said that he would not give any concessions, but since the young man wanted it so much, he could ask him any question. After his words, the hero stated that the man's actions led him to think that he was intentionally making everyone refuse the red orders and only take the simple blue ones. He then suggested that the reward for the red task, which he pays to the performer, is very large, which is completely unprofitable for the man. Lopez listened to the young man with interest. Luis said that if his guess was correct, successfully completing the 3 red deliveries would be a serious blow to the man's finances. The director confirmed the young man's guess and then asked if he had any questions left. The hero turned towards the exit, reminding that it was only about one issue. He was not eager to get acquainted with Lopez's revolver. When the guy disappeared behind the door, the man remarked that he expected nothing else from a traveler who had experienced something like that. He was curious to see all of his potential. When Luis exited the hall, he was blinded by a bright light that suddenly appeared in the dark room. A man with a glowing head approached him. He said that he had 3 blue tasks and offered to exchange. John said that with such a level, the guy wouldn't be able to complete 3 red tasks. If he hands this matter over to him, he will still have a chance for survival. Noticing Luis's scrutinizing gaze, the man said that if he had any objections, he could challenge him. The hero remembered him. Charlie had mentioned that he had passed a strong level trial. When John saw that the guy took out his directory, he didn't hide his smile, saying that it was a sensible choice. But in the next moment, the guy tore off one of the sheets, activating the task. He walked past the man, saying that his hand had accidentally twitched. John's actions angered the young man, and he decided to attack him from behind. But Luis drew his weapon before the man could reach him. John froze in shock, fully aware of the power of the purple level weapon. A few seconds later, the man stepped away from the guy, saying that he was far from weak and would definitely handle these tasks. After which, the hero said goodbye to him and headed off to make the delivery. Sometime later, Luis was already standing at the house where the boss lived, to whom he needed to deliver the doll. He rang the intercom and said that he had a delivery for the mad lady. The hero listened, hoping to hear something in response. Suddenly, a deafening scream came from the intercom. After waiting a few minutes, he reported again that the courier had arrived. At first, there was a strange hissing sound, and the guy managed to make out the phrase, "Come in yourself," through it. Luis said that the gates were locked and he would not be able to enter, but in response, there was another hiss. The guy realized that he had no way out, and he summoned his weapon. After that, without hesitation, he chopped through the massive gates. A few seconds later, he found himself at the entrance door, opening it. When he stepped inside, he was struck by what he saw. The spacious room was cluttered with trash, and in the center, on the couch, sat a girl in front of a monitor. The hero broke the silence by saying that he had delivered her order. The girl turned her head towards him, gesturing for him to speak more quietly, as her pet had just fallen asleep. He apologized and whispered, asking if she would accept the delivery. The girl approached him, asking if the doll was her Sonia. Then she looked at her pet, saying that Sonia was already in her hands. Luis understood that the girl was not herself and began to carefully back away toward the exit. Suddenly, the girl threw the doll, calling the guy a liar. She became furious and lunged at the delivery man, saying that he wanted to steal her child. The hero ran away from her, swallowing restorative potions along the way. The client was determined to kill him. As soon as the guy saw the door, he rushed into the room without hesitation. He locked her in with a latch to secure himself a temporary refuge. After that, he looked around the room he found himself in. It was strikingly different from the other rooms in the house. On one of the walls, he noticed a drawing and approached to take a closer look. Looking down at the table, he noticed a calendar marked with the days since the disappearance of this woman's daughter. The hero felt pity for her, as she had been searching for her child for so long. He was flipping through the calendar when a business card fell out of it. It stated that by paying a sufficient price, they would deliver anything. After reading the inscription, the guy thought that the director had gone too far in his lies. In the next moment, a knife sliced through the door. The guy looked around the room in an attempt to come up with a plan of action. Suddenly, he noticed a wardrobe. Upon opening it, Luis had a brilliant idea. A few minutes later, the woman broke down the door. After that, she finally managed to get inside. Her rage subsided at what she saw. The hero changed into her daughter's clothes, fully immersing himself in this role. The woman slowly approached her daughter, whom she saw before her, asking when her girl had grown up so much. A moment later, she hugged the guy, whose plan had succeeded, saying that it didn't matter how much she had changed. The main thing was that she was alive. After these words, the hero recoiled from the woman's body, saying that she was wrong, and in the next moment, he plunged the knife into his stomach. Watching this scene, the mother was flooded with fragments of memories. Her little daughter was playing in the garden with a doll, while the little girl was engrossed in drawing. An unknown man approached her. She turned around to see who it was. A few seconds later, the doll was stained with blood. The woman came for her daughter when it was time for dinner, but instead of her, she saw only a pool of blood. In search of her daughter, she came across a store that would deliver anything their customer wished. The woman asked the man if he had seen the girl in the photograph. Her heart stopped for a couple of moments when she was told that he had seen her. The hopeful mother asked where he had seen her. Lopez said that he would be happy to tell, but his company's services are not free. She will have to pay a considerable price. She fell to her knees, saying that she would do anything to get her daughter back. After her words, the man said that she must give up her sanity, and soon her daughter would return. Moments later, he consumed the mind of the poor woman, saying that she would become their regular client. Lewis used suggestion on her to awaken her from her madness, and now he was watching her try to resist him. She was delirious, begging not to be awakened from her sleep. Realizing that this would take a long time, the guy moved toward the exit of the room. Instead of our hero, the woman saw her little daughter, but in the next moment, her reality shattered into pieces, and a guy with a doll in his hand stood before her. He congratulated her on managing to regain most of her sanity. She felt as if she had woken up from a long sleep. Lewis sat down next to the woman, handing her the doll. He said that it was sent by his boss. She had to figure out for herself what this package meant. He said that there are still many things in the world she can do besides deceiving herself and depending on others. When the system reported that he had completed the order and had been promoted to an excellent worker, he stood up and said it was time for him to return. When he reached the door, he was called out. The woman asked if her lost daughter Sonia was alive. He smiled and said that she should go see for herself and find out everything. When the guy left her house, she placed the doll on the bed, saying that she would definitely figure everything out. Meanwhile, Lopez held a broken figurine of a woman, saying that she had been a good client. After that, he set it aside and said it was time to start the second part of his play. He asked Sonia if she agreed with him. From behind the tightly locked door, a quiet voice was heard. Other players were not doing as well as Louis. One by one, clients dealt harshly with them. Meanwhile, John was running through the forest, having obtained a red order. The system informed him that he needed to deliver love to the king of the crypt. Suddenly, he stopped, sensing someone's presence. Thinking that there might be an ambush, he hid in the bushes, intending to find out where the danger was coming from. To his surprise, John saw only Lewis changing clothes. The hero heard a noise from the bushes and turned around. In the next moment, he smiled and waved to his new acquaintance, telling him to come out of hiding. The man was very surprised when he noticed a sign above the boy's head that read, "Excellent worker." Lewis recounted that he met an obsessed client in women's clothing who wanted to look better than him, but the guy emerged victorious. When John asked if he had any more such orders, the hero handed him a removed dress, asking if he wanted to try it on too, but he refused. Understanding the absurdity of the idea, the man cast a careful glance at the boy, concluding that he had simply incredible abilities. If we also consider his weapon, he could very well be someone who has passed the trials of a hard level. A couple of moments later, he proposed to Lewis that they collaborate, as they could help each other complete the red tasks. He explained that monsters can leave bad reviews, and they will track couriers, intending to get rid of them. If they work together, it will be much easier to deal with the bloodthirsty monsters. To prove the sincerity of his intentions, John handed his order to the hero so that he could review its contents. Noticing the surprise on Lewis's face as he read the order sheet, the man asked what had caused such a reaction from the guy. The hero returned John's task and materialized his red order. A moment later, the man realized that they had the same client, but the guy needed to deliver light, not love. He said that, in that case, they should stick together. In the next moment, strange sounds were heard from behind. A monster, hunting for couriers, emerged into the clearing where they were. The guys managed to hide among the bushes. John told his partner to head to the mission site while he dealt with the monster, but Lewis took out his cloak, telling the man to follow him. and perhaps they could bypass the monster without taking any damage. John activated his ability, watching the opponent. He said that if the guy is not confident in his abilities, he can safely leave while he deals with the monster himself. But the hero assured him that everything was fine and they could set out. A moment later, the enemy discovered their hideout. The monster saw someone preparing to deal with its prey, raising giant scissors over the man. From the unknown, danger loomed. He noticed the unwelcome guest, rejoicing that another fool would become his victim. The monster said that it was just passing by and started to back away. Lewis was amused by its words and began to slowly approach the trembling eye monster. A couple of moments later, the guy's opponent was already running as fast as possible away from that place. When the hero no longer felt the presence of others, he informed that his partner could get up. John was impressed by the guy's abilities. He said that having someone like him as an enemy was a very dangerous idea, so the man suggested they become friends. A few seconds later, they touched each other's tags, adding each other as friends. When they emerged from their hiding place, John explained that if the monster was not satisfied with the order in this trial, it would go insane and start hunting the traveler with the intent to kill. All the while, the man ran ahead, supposedly escaping from the monster's pursuit. At the same time, Louis, who was pursuing him, scared away all the monsters in their path with his aura. Sometime later, they arrived at the location. The partners entered the territory of the crypt. Suddenly, John thought he heard a voice from above. The monster climbed down from the tree, asking how a human dared to enter the territory of the king of the crypt. After that, it jumped down. The monster with a bandaged eye said that he hates people. John said that he had come to deliver his order. After that, Vertilac reported that he wanted to get his eye back. The man did not understand what the monster meant. He explained that once he came to the surface to enjoy some delicious food, he encountered a terrible nomadic man who stole his eye. The king of the crypt was filled with hatred, but the robber had a terrifying monster bodyguard that he dared not attack. John did not understand how a monster could be a bodyguard for someone. Meanwhile, Louis cleared his throat strangely, agreeing that it was hard to imagine. Meanwhile, the king of the crypt continued, saying that this is why he turned to the delivery service. They must either bring him the stolen eye or give up their own. Suddenly, a group of uninvited guests appeared behind John. Lewis, noticing the strange expression on his partner's face, asked who they were. In response, he heard that they were old acquaintances. The girl was flattered that the man had not forgotten her. After that, she moved towards the guys, asking if John could, out of old friendship, surrender himself without resistance, ensuring an easy execution of the order for the girl. The hero caught her attention by asking if he could quietly leave while they sorted things out, as he was just a novice. Amelia Mila, smiling, replied that if her target had an assistant, he was also ordered to be eliminated, especially since he didn't look much like a novice. The hero had no other choice. He said that he was also going to treat her as a novice. After that, he leaned against the werewolf, stating that only he could resolve this situation. The monster did not understand what was happening. A moment later, Lewis removed his hood and turned to the king of the crypt, asking if he would recognize him. He looked at the real guy in front of him with surprise. The werewolf recognized his tormentor, and rage overwhelmed him. Amelia's companions laughed at the hero, saying that surrendering to the monster in such a way was pure suicide. The king of the crypt intended to attack him, but he was unsettled by the calmness of his victim in the face of death, so he stopped at the last moment. Lewis raised his head and, smiling dangerously, asked why he wasn't continuing. The monster feared that the woman was somewhere nearby, and if she saw that the boy was injured, he wouldn't be able to get away so easily. After considering all of this, the werewolf placed a paw on the hero's shoulder, saying that they are friends despite the past. The others were puzzled watching this scene. Meanwhile, Lewis took the opportunity and asked the monster to help him get rid of the unwanted guests. At his request, the werewolf hesitantly scratched his head, saying that there were too many of them. After his words, the hero pulled out the monster's eye, which the werewolf so desperately wanted to reclaim. The guy said that if he behaves well, he will get his eye back. But if the king of the crypt suddenly finds him unnecessary, the hero will tell his beloved that he really likes this trophy, and it would be nice to acquire another one to match it. The monster took the eye, saying that he would do anything. After that, the system reported the successful completion of the order. The hero was promoted to head of the HR department, and now he could resist the manager's will to a certain extent. Meanwhile, the king of the crypt lunged at the uninvited guests. He struck them with lightning speed. Amelia, seizing a suitable opportunity, decided to flee, wishing her companions good luck. Suddenly, John attacked her from behind. The girl managed to dodge the deadly strike. The man warned her not to dare disturb his partner in any way. She noticed that this guy was not indifferent to him, which further fueled her interest in Lewis. In the next moment, she used a decoy, leaving a straw doll in her place. At the same time, our hero was already far enough away from the crypt. He activated a new mission. He needed to bring laughter to the Hills subway station. All this time, Lopez, who had been lurking in the shadows, stated that everything in his play was starting to go off script. It was time for him to intervene in this drama as its screenwriter. He took control of his actors, who began to deviate from the plot. By managing them, he eliminated distractions one by one, after which he absorbed the levels of the slain players, saying that it was still too little. Meanwhile, the werewolf dealt with his opponents. He turned to John, saying that he would remember someone strong like him. Suddenly, the monster felt a terrible headache. The man asked what was happening to him. The king of the crypt said that he had been alone for a long time and had taken on several orders. If he did not get what he wanted, the manager would take care of it. John sat down next to the monster, saying that he had another order for him. The werewolf was surprised by this statement. In the next moment, the man sat on top of the monster lying on its back, telling it to trust him. After that, he kissed the king of the crypt. The monster cried with happiness. Lewis reached the nearest city, noticing that the monsters had become much more ferocious than they were before. Shifting his attention to the girl who had him pinned against the wall, he asked why she was pursuing him when her target was John. Amelia said that she does not know what kind of relationship connects them, but all the players who entered the top 100 have abandoned all moral principles. John is no exception. He will do anything for a promotion. Lewis asked why she was telling him all this. The girl leaned close to the guy's face, freezing in dangerous proximity, and said that she wanted to know what he was worth. Sometime later, Lewis was running away from Amelia with all his might. She asked why he suddenly ran away from her, saying she wasn't going to eat him. While jumping over an obstacle, he heard the girl say that her boss was looking for a guy who had passed a fierce level for a high reward. Outpacing him, she said that he was exactly the one she was looking for. He cannot hide from the girl with his current stats. Lewis asked why she didn't take him out immediately when she had the chance. Smiling, Amelia replied that she had a proposal for him. After that, she took out her weapon. Aiming at the guy, she activated the spell. The hero did not dodge, understanding that it was a binding weapon and that it would not cause much harm. A few moments later, he was pleasantly surprised when he realized that his skill levels had increased for a certain period. The girl explained that the trick of this dungeon is that as long as the player does not encounter the overseer, despite all the player's strength, they cannot defeat the boss. By coincidence, the overseer was Louis. The hero understood her plan. After some time, the young man managed to open the huge doors with difficulty. Before him, he saw a creature that emitted an incomprehensible howl. Noticing the guest, it turned towards the entrance. After that, approaching the guy, it sat down in front of him and began to cry, shedding bloody tears. For some unknown reason, the guy was also shedding tears. He asked the monster sitting in front of him why it was crying. Not receiving any response, the hero sat across from his client, asking him to smile. Once again, there was no reaction. Louis tried to smile himself, but he was only overwhelmed by sadness even more. A moment later, the monster climbed onto his back, saying that it was in great pain. He asked them to laugh together while the dark matter gradually consumed the hero. The monster infiltrated the boy's inner world, and they found themselves in a hospital room. He realized that this person had endured a lot of pain. He wanted to see what fears haunted our hero. Lewis said that since he wants it so badly, he will allow someone else to see it. Sadness began to retreat in fear after the guy started showing him part of his memories. When Lewis unleashed all his painful moments from the past, hundreds of demons began to surround the monster. The hero was glad that finally someone would see and understand all his pain. For the monster, it was too unbearable, and it left the guy's consciousness fleeing away from him. Regaining his composure, Louis asked him not to run away, as he had not finished yet. But the monster did not listen, moving closer to its refuge. Having found safety, he huddled in a corner. Shaking with fear, he faced a real monster for the first time. Moments later, Louis kicked down the door, asking why the monster had run away from him. Lopez directed his play in the right direction. He said that few can smile in the face of crying, which brings out people's most painful memories, destroying the opponent. Suddenly, he froze. He could not understand why the cry was so frightened. The monster threw a doll lying next to the guy at him, telling him to leave. Lewis looked at the object that had been thrown at him. He remembered that he had delivered a similar doll to a woman who had lost a child. In the next moment, he knelt before the monster, asking if the name Sophia was his old name. The monster reacted to that name, saying it sounded familiar. In the next moment, he felt a terrible headache. The hero became worried about the monster, asking what was wrong with it. Suddenly, a green thread shot out from its back, attacking the guy. Lewis tried to deflect the attack with his weapon. After being knocked back a distance, he saw several more threads bursting from the monster's back. The guy managed to escape from that room, dodging the constant attacks. Having reached a safe distance, he stopped. He mentally thanked Amelia for enhancing his skills a little earlier. Suddenly, his weapon was entwined with numerous threads. The appearing Lopez said that he has been watching the guy for a long time, and he would prefer to keep such dangerous weapons to himself. Taking a few steps forward, he apologized for his tears, explaining that being close to the crying had also subjected him to that ability. In the next moment, Lewis was surrounded by a dozen puppets. Trying to hold back his tears, the guy said that he was very touched that the director himself had come down to oversee the process. At Lopez's instruction, the puppets brought a chair for his outstanding employee. When they both sat down, the director asked the hero what the most important thing in running a business is. Without waiting for an answer, he answered himself that it is demand. Only with demand can one achieve success. But to strengthen it, one must ensure that the services are in demand. The child is one that he raised to help him reveal the fears of his clients. Knowing this, he brings them to reality, maintaining a constant flow of clients. After that, he used the puppeteer's ability to bring the puppet to them, saying that if he killed the guy, Lopez would receive points to level up. When the monster got close enough, the man handed it his revolver, aiming it at the boy. Lewis defended himself from the shot with the console that Lenny had left him. He said that it was rude to kill his best worker like that, without giving him the right to have the last word. After that, he activated the console. This artifact could summon a girl for assistance. Lopez was alerted by the whirlwind that had risen around them. All the puppets of the man were pushed back several meters from the hero. But a few moments later, the wind settled and no one appeared before the guy. Lopez breathed a sigh of relief. Immediately after that, the puppets lunged at the guy. When one of them almost reached its target, something happened that the man did not expect at all. A weapon belonging to Lenny appeared from thin air, protecting Lewis from the attack. The director realized that he would have to deal with the guy with his own hands. The cushion cut all the strings that Lopez had released. Having removed the obstacle, she dealt a crushing blow to the man. Suddenly, the guy's weapon was freed from its bindings. Lewis picked it up, noting that this cushion is truly a deadly weapon. Sometime later, the console disappeared. It was a one-time artifact. Now Lewis had to deal with Lopez on his own.